And joining me now by phone, as promised, it's Ty Stone. Morning, Ty. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, great. Now, I wanted to ask first, I know that you've been on the road and you're just getting back in the area. Where all have you been?
Well, over the last few months, we did a Uncle Cracker tour and we did a rehab tour. So we've basically been from Tacoma, Washington, all the way to Key West, Florida, and pretty much everywhere in between.
Does it seem kind of surreal to you?
It seems very surreal to me in some sense, in that how quickly this year has slipped by, but at the same time, it's sort of really become sort of the everyday wake up in a weird hotel, drive 5 hours, play a gig. Luckily, the bars even look the same out there. It's really crazy. You know, every town has sort of this big wooded open dance floor country bar, and we've been doing this whole country tour, so it's actually really cool. It's surreal in a lot of different ways.
Well, I have to ask you, because you know you were doing clubs and jobbing around and kind of working part-time jobs and playing a little bit, and then all of a sudden somebody hands a promo disc of yours to Kid Rock.
Yeah.
What's it?
That's exactly what happened. My friend Sam had gotten a hold of my demo, and I was in LA at the time, flipping hamburgers in this Irish bar that had great live music, and Kid Rock got the CD at the game. When Sam got the tickets, his sister, who works for the Pistons, told him that the seats were really good. They're kind of by where Kid Rock sits sometimes, and so he thought to take the demo. And he ran into Kid Rock, or Bob, as everybody seems to call him, over there, and gave him the CD and said, "Hey, you should listen to this kid," you know. And sure enough, he did. And next thing you know, we got to be friends, and he came out and saw a show and said he wanted to sign me to his label, and it's all been pretty crazy since then.
Well, but what's that like, that first call? I mean, everybody always kind of brushes over that part and says, you know, well, I got a call, and then we got to be friends, and you know, and now we're doing this. But that when you got that first call that he said, "Hey, I really like this stuff."
Well,
what's that
honestly,
like?
the way it actually happened was Sam called me the day after the game and said he gave the CD to Kid Rock, and I was like, "Well, that's really cool." And at the time, I just thought that seemed like an accomplishment in and of itself. You know, I
Sure.
thought that was just the coolest thing ever. And then it was a few days later, or maybe it was a week or two later, when they called us. Sam had put his phone number on the demo. So what had happened was Kid Rock's guy had called Sam and asked him if we had anything else they could hear. So as soon as Sam called me that morning to say that Kid Rock's guy had called him about the CD, I started freaking out. It was very early in the morning. I was in Los Angeles, so it had to be like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
That's 10 o'clock in Detroit when they had called Sam. And I was literally just repeatedly asking him, like, "Are you lying to me? You know, like, this is not funny if you're messing with me right now. Are you serious?" And he's like, "I'm dead serious." And we just had this big freak out moment, and I had to be like, "Dude, I have to call you back right now. I'm totally freaking out." You know, I mean, not to sound like a 5-year-old kid on Christmas, but I just basically lost my mind.
Well, yeah, well, like you said, Ty, it's one thing to know that a demo got to somebody that's up there, but you never know if they're going to listen to it.
Yeah, and I really even doubted they would, or even if he just, you know, I don't know, it was a cool feeling to think that a guy of that musical stature was aware you existed even. I don't know. It's funny how things have changed over the years. But that was, to me, was like, you know, the biggest thing that had ever happened to me. And then one night, maybe a week later, we hadn't heard anything, and I was cooking at the bar, and the phone rang, and it was a Detroit number I didn't recognize, so I just sent it to voicemail. And on my break, I went outside to have a cigarette, and checked my voicemail, and it was Kid Rock, leaving a message being like, hey, I really like your stuff. And it was just totally wild. I mean, it was the first time I'd ever heard his voice, but you could tell it was him, and it was just really, like, so real at that point. I was like, holy shit, Kid Rock just called me, and sorry.
No, you're fine.
But I just, like, it was the most incredible experience of your life, and every moment after that really has just been, like, just these amazing, incredible, life-changing experiences, but there's also 6 months of, like, sitting in your mom's basement in between those or whatever. But
sure.
Just the amount of cool and great things I've been exposed to since that happened has just been, like, my wildest fantasies come true.
Well, I want to ask you a little bit about the music that you write and the amount of music that you have. And we've had a couple of tracks that we play from time to time on this show from a show you did on our radio station at WKUF called The Butcher Shop Show on Friday nights. And you played live, and we have those and play them from time to time. One of them is Bob Seger.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And they're great songs, and it's fun to have them in the mix. And of course, we'll be playing others as well. But and we always talk about how great the songwriting is. Did you set out? There's a place in your bio where you're quoted as saying something to the effect that you liken yourself to Bob Seger or John Mellencamp because of the relationship to working people. Does that change when you start taking for granted that you're signed with Kid Rock and these gigs are being lined up? Is it harder to write that way?
No, I'll tell you, it's so funny because my folks are really, really hardworking people, and they're. My dad just bought a house in Monroe County that is just such a mess, and he and my mom work on it every single day. They work all day long. They're doing the floors, and they're doing the walls and the ceilings, and they're just redoing the entire house day by day. Whatever little bit of money comes in. My dad still works at Chrysler, the tread and engine plant. Mm-hmm. And after he comes home from work, they work on this house all day long. And it's very easy for me to see working people. I mean, that's who I grew up with. And that's why when I liken myself to a Bob Seger or a John Mellencamp, it's because I feel like my parents are the people they were singing about,
Right. And that keeps you grounded.
Yeah, and I've done I've worked at Ford and I worked at Great Lakes Steel. And I did I did my share of jobs like that. And to be honest with you, man, I work harder now than I've ever worked in my life. I mean, I feel like I have a job that literally works me 18 hours every single day. I mean, this is my first day off, and like, if I wasn't traveling for work or playing a show, I'd say this is literally my first day off in a month, and I'm on the phone talking to you, and later I have to spend an hour, figuring out how we spent and how much money we brought in over the last month, and it's like so work is a very easy subject for me to write about. Although I tend to write about love twice as much as I write about work. I like them girls,
Yeah, boy meets girl. She dumps on him, boy starts rock band.
No doubt. I mean, I would have never written the music I wrote if there wasn't always some girl in my life I was after, so the one that got away or the one that never was, and those are just piles and piles of notebooks full of stuff about that, and it's very easy for me to. For some reason, it's always been very easy to me to just capture those moments and really open my heart when those things happen, I like telling that story or something. I always like